Success! Oh, hi. Glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. Today I'm going to talk about the most impactful films on me that were released in 2008. Uh, Igor. Igor is an animated film. It's fun, it's cute, it's enjoyable. I like that movie. I remember my wife and I bought it on DVD and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think I watched it like twice, but this was over a decade ago. And the reason I bring it up is ever since there's a song in it that I sing quite frequently and immediately remembered. And yeah, um, I guess it's more of it's like an appreciation of larger women because Igor makes this big. Yeah, but I love that song as someone who's delved in experience and appreciates old things. Um, the bigger the figure, the better I like her, the better I like her, the more that I feed her, the more that I feed her, the bigger the figure, the bigger the figure, the more I can love. Like, how does that not get in your head and you repeat it over and over? Anyway, Burn After Reading, great Coen Brothers film with Brad Pitt, hilarious. Uh, um, 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 uh, John Malkovich, also hilarious in that film. But I quote that film quite a bit. My brother and I back then, we would always, especially when you find something, it was just lying there on the floor there. You think that's a Schwinn? Bicycle people, it's got great great lines of dialogue that I quote quite often. Burn After Reading, classic. The Dark Knight. I guess I have to bring up The Dark Knight because it's The Dark Knight, and I'll never forget hearing the news about Heath Ledger being cast when I was at work at Village Inn on the radio that the cooks were listening to. And I, like everyone else, questioned it, and then of course we saw and was like, "Oh my gosh!" But I remember seeing The Dark Knight in theaters. I think I might have gone to one of the midnight ones. Yeah, I think I went to a midnight screening of The Dark Knight, like back when they didn't do like now the first showing of a movie is Thursday afternoon. But back then, before, of course, The Dark Knight Rises, which I believe was the reason they started changing that so that people weren't forced to see the first showing at midnight. Anyway, I remember I did not like that movie whatsoever. Like I hated it when I first saw it. I saw it a second time and I started to appreciate. I appreciate it more every time I see it. I think initially I hated it because Heath Ledger was so good in it that it made the rest of the movie look bad. And the Two Face is one of my favorite Batman villains, and I just was very upset that they kind of rushed his whole story in one film, and then he was over and done with. So I appreciate it more, but no, it's not my favorite of the three. What is my favorite of the three? Probably the first one? Maybe the third one. Probably the first one. I don't know. Anyway, I don't think The Dark Knight is a brilliant masterpiece. It's a great movie. I've come a long way since then, but I'll never forget I was the one person on the planet who hated it. And now I love experiencing those things all the time now. I'm the one guy who didn't like Guardians 3. X Files, I Want to Believe. That's the second X Files film. The first X Files film I absolutely love is one of my favorite movies, and I'll never forget it being its own little story, but it still took place in between two seasons. So the previous season finale and then the later season premiere dealt with things that movie was dealing with. Very well connected. All the answers were in the movie. You just had to buy the soundtrack and hear Chris Carter spell it all out for you in the hidden track. That's the first movie that we're not talking about that. We're talking about the second movie. And the second movie was years after the show ended. The first time the show ended, and then they came back and ended, and then they came back one more time, and then for real ended, because that last season was not, even though it had one of the best. Anyway, but I remember seeing the second movie. It's okay. I like it. I appreciate it for what it is. It's very different. The first movie being all about the mythology of the show, and the second movie being more of a standalone story, like the weekly monster episodes of the show. And it's great. I appreciated it for what it was. I remember seeing it. I had to take a bus a long way to get to the theater for the premiere showing, and the bus stop only went so far, so then I had to walk quite a ways to get to the theater. And I remember during my walk, I got a phone call from a coworker. She was this lady, a little older than me. I think she had a thing for me. Looking back on this event, she clearly was trying to hook up, but I was so ignorant back then. She calls me up. What are you doing? I'm going to a movie. Oh, who with? No one. I'm just going to a movie. Oh, what movie? X-Files. Oh, cool. I love X-Files. I used to watch it with my daughter. I'll go with you. I'm like, okay. So she met me at the theater, saw the movie with me, which I wasn't planning, and then gave me a ride home. And like I said, in retrospect, I think she wanted to take me back to her place. I didn't really push it, though, as much as I liked her and she was attractive enough. Full disclosure, pardon my vulgarity, but I'm pretty sure she had implants. And fake boobies taste funny. I'm not a big fan of fake. I like them all natural. Swing low, sweet chariots. But women are more naturally beautiful with their natural appearance. Every time they do plastic surgery or Botox, it makes them look either not good or worse. I don't understand how it's been so long and they still don't know that you just shouldn't do that. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Tropic Thunder, because Tropic Thunder, if you ask me, is the greatest comedy ever made. I think Tropic Thunder, on my list on Letterboxd of funniest comedies as far as rewatchability, creativity, production value, and hilarity, laugh out loud throughout, Tropic Thunder #1. That is one of the funniest. When I saw that movie, it was one of the funniest movies I'd ever seen before the movie even started, because of the fake trailers at the beginning. I love Tropic Thunder. Everyone in it is at their comedic best, including Tom Cruise, who I'm currently staring at on my television as I watch the film Vanilla Sky. Is that on any of these lists? Did I mention that before? Oh. Anyway. So yeah, Tropic Thunder. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. I could watch that every day. Every day. Yes, Man. Yes, Man. The Jim Carrey movie. Great. I just remember classic. It was a big deal when it came out. He hadn't really been doing much at the time. It was his first time really getting into a wacky comedy in a while. And of course, there's the Red Bull scene that always comes to mind. Red Bull! We should get a Red Bull. I've never had a Red Bull, and I just had a Red Bull, and I really like Red Bull now. We should go get a Red Bull. Yeah, it's a good time. And I tried to live by that philosophy for a little while, to an extent. Obviously, you don't say yes to everything, but to be more open-minded and see where the adventure takes you. Took me straight to a divorce. But I think that's because she became a yes woman. Or just a slut. Anyway. I don't mean that. I take it back. She's my best friend. We moved on from that. We already talked about my divorce in my 30s video. Or was that the 20s video? 30s video? 20s video. Probably both of them. Ooh, another great comedy is Pineapple Express. Pineapple Express. Terrence Stamp is amazing, and Yes Man, by the way. I just have to mention that. Pineapple Express was a big deal, especially when it came out. I mean, now it's an all-time classic comedy, yes, of course. But I remember seeing the film and just, like, the second half was more than I bargained for, because for months, all we knew about this movie was there was a clip of it on another DVD that I bought. And we watched this clip over and over, because just this clip by itself, we couldn't believe was not only in a movie, but was going to be the movie. And it was the beginning when he, well, yeah, when the two of them names are escaping me, but when Seth Rogen and you know Franco, thank you, James Franco smoked cross joint together. He's talking about Architects. My second favorite, like the characters, the personalities, the jokes, like it was all like we were just laughing our butts off at this one little scene. And then of course you see the movie, and you've got Bill Hader starting at the beginning. I love the beginning. It's like that movie's hilarious. Love it. Classic, but I'll never forget the impression that one scene left on us for months before they even released a full trailer of what the story was, and then eventually we saw the movie. But for a while, it was just this like little short film of that scene when he stops by to buy, and then dude wants him to hang out and smoke his cross joint. I can't smoke this by myself. Anyway, another great comedy that year, good year for comedies, I tell you what, was Get Smart. I love that. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I quote it all the time. We're gonna go dance. You go and have some punch. Okay. Or nuclear. How Alan Arkin would always get mad about how people pronounced nuclear. Nuclear. Nuclear, and then he was like nuclear. I don't know, something like that. It was funny. So every time I hear the word nuclear, I say nuclear, because Alan Arkin's funny. Oh, excuse me. Try not to sneeze here for a second. This is real time. But Get Smart was a great movie, and I remember when they were promoting the DVD. I was like, I'll buy that DVD, and there's a special mode on the DVD where when a symbol appears, you can click it and see outtakes from that scene. And I'm like, sweet. And it did, and it worked, and it like a charm, all except for one part when he's in the jet. And that was the part that they kept showing on the commercial to promote this special feature. And they showed clips in that commercial that were never on my DVD anywhere in any shape or form. Not in the blooper reel, not in the deleted scenes, not in the special version where you click on stuff every time it shows up, much like in Dodgeball has a version like that too. And I felt ripped off. Like I still have never seen those scenes that they advertised but weren't actually put on that feature. Anyway, I need to excavate my nostril real quick. Okay, sorry about all that. Indy 4. Yeah, I have it written down as Indy 4. Excuse me. But in 2008, a little movie called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was released. And I've seen the South Park episode, but it didn't faze me before, during, or since. I love Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I loved it when I first saw it, and never once have I had an issue with it. Seriously though, I love that movie. It's Indiana Jones. It's 100% Indiana Jones. And they up the ante every time. You got the first one about talking to God. You got the second one about rocks that control the weather. You got the third one about the holy freaking grail that can make all everlasting life. And then the fourth one, what are you going to do? Of course, spoiler alert, aliens, or technically extra-dimensional beings. Yeah, awesome. I love Shia LaBeouf. I was very excited that he was playing Indy's son, and then they brought back Marion from the first one. I was so happy about all of these decisions. And then everybody hated it. No more Shia. It's not coming back. Now we got a fifth one coming out just to make all those whiny people happy. He was in a fridge. Yeah, it was cool. It was made out of lead. He survived. It's a movie, right? It's Indiana Jones. If you complain about anything in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, then you should be complaining about a ton of similar things in the other three films. They're all ridiculous. None of it's realistic. It's Indiana Jones. And Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was awesome. It's what made me a fan of Cate Blanchett. I didn't care about Cate Blanchett till I saw her in this, and I was like, ooh, Cate Blanchett. Yeah. I like the Crystal Skull myself. And I'm really pissed that this new one not only doesn't have Mutt, but they're gonna pretend, oh, that's my goddaughter now. We'll have another child character, but we'll ignore Mutt. And I'm sure Marion's not gonna be back. What's the point? The only reason I'm slightly invested in that movie is because I believe that they're upping the ante again. Where do you go after aliens? Time travel. So at least the Dial of Destiny is a time machine. I don't care if they use it. As long as that's what it is, I'll check out the movie, whatever. But I liked how it ended with Crystal Skull, and I love that movie, always will. And yeah, I won't be surprised if I end up liking Crystal Skull more than Dial of Destiny. Crazy, huh? We'll see. We'll see. They got their work cut out for them, but the movie's like freaking almost 3 hours. I don't understand why every movie's 3 hours these days. The Spirit is very much like Sin City, also based on a Frank Miller graphic novel, but this one Frank Miller directed on his own, and I love that movie. It's absolutely fantastic. You get Scarlett Johansson, you've got Samuel L. Jackson. It's very quotable. It's a great story. It's visually stunning, stylistically aesthetic. I love The Spirit, and I quote it quite often, mainly Samuel L. Jackson. I do not like egg on my face. The Spirit. If you like Sin City and you haven't seen The Spirit, check it out. I highly recommend it. It's a good time. WALL-E. WALL-E, of course we're going to mention WALL-E. WALL-E. WALL-E was such a big deal back then. I used to work at Village Inn and I had co-workers coined a nickname for me. Once they saw WALL-E, they stopped calling me Paul and started calling me Paulie. It was endearing enough. But I loved WALL-E. I remember I saw WALL-E at the mall back where I currently work. Back when they were using film and there was a burnout. Not like a burnout like in the corner, but I mean like the film reel was destroyed in the middle of the film and I had to leave and come back and finish it. So I saw the first half of WALL-E for a while and then eventually saw the second half. I believe I went back to theaters a while, maybe a couple weeks later, something like that. I saw it with some people. So I've technically seen the first half of WALL-E more than the second half. But that movie, by far, if you ask me, Pixar's best. My favorite Pixar. I mean, sure, you got Toy Story, like the OG. Okay, but WALL-E's story is so perfect because that's exactly where humanity's heading. We're all fat, lazy pieces of garbage that will continue to destroy the earth so that we can continue to be fat and lazy until we cannot sustain ourselves anymore. We will overpopulate this planet and our species will die just because we all want to consume. Those are the only two things a living creature does, by the way, is consume and defecate. I'd go into further detail, but that's a whole nother philosophy conversation. Let's not get distracted. Max Payne. I'll mention Max Payne. The movie's not great. It's okay. But I have so many memories playing that video game. I was very excited to see the movie. Could have been better. Could have been worse. What are you going to do? But that game, I used to play Max Payne in the basement with the creator of Madness. That's right. The Day the Earth Stood Still. I'd never seen the original. I was a big fan of Keanu Reeves. It seemed very intriguing. We got Jennifer Connelly, yes please and thank you. And I'll never forget seeing that movie and I absolutely loved it. Blew my mind. I love that movie. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Very underrated. I love what they did with the big statue thing being a thing that ends up turning into all the nanobots and wiping everything out. And another great moral that's it's so true, and we know that it's true, and we don't do anything about it because we don't care, because all we want to do is consume and defecate. But it being this thing of let's eliminate everything because you humans don't deserve. And I also like the Nine Inch Nails song that's on their Year Zero album. And it's very much inspired by The Day the Earth Stood Still, about aliens coming and saying, you guys have squandered your rights to any of this planet especially, if not also your existence. So either shape up or ship out. And we're going to be shipping ourselves out. This species is slowly killing itself. It's too late. There's nothing we can do about it. Cloverfield. Cloverfield was such a big deal back in the day. I am so glad I was alive for that ad campaign and like nobody knowing what the heck it was or what was going on. And then we get in the theater and you're literally watching this movie just trying to see what this thing is. Like, it's so rare to go to a movie not knowing what you're in for these days. Everything's spoiled or announced beforehand. There's very few surprises, especially when the movie itself is the surprise. What is this thing? I don't know. Let's wonder the whole movie and then at the very end kinda get a look at it. Great movie. Love that movie. Lizzie Kaplan. That was probably the first thing I seen her in before I knew that that was Lizzie Kaplan. Because then I became a huge fan of hers on Party Down, which I'm not interested in the reboot because she's not in. But I'm loving Basic Instinct. Or no, excuse me, not Basic Instinct. Forgive me. Scratch that. Take two. But I'm loving Fatal Attraction. Use take two. Lizzie Kaplan's on this new Fatal Attraction show with Josh Lucas. It's pretty good actually. On Paramount Plus, which I only have for a couple of months so I can watch Yellow Jackets on Showtime. But Lizzie Kaplan, I'll watch in anything. You ever see Masters of Sex? I like Lizzie Kaplan a lot. Cloverfield was a really good movie. I'll never forget seeing it with my wife, and the scene when they're on the roof and they got to cross over, we were so like immersed and like queasy and like felt like we were gonna fall off this roof at any minute. Oh, such a fun film to see in theaters. Way different in theaters. Oh. Quarantine. Speaking of a movie I saw in theaters for no reason and wasn't even that good. Quarantine is a movie I saw in theaters for not a good reason and there was no point. But I saw it because in the promotion it was one of those, on this day, this thing happened, like based on a true story, and this crazy story happened on this day, but they were advertising the date of that day, and the date was 3/11. They kept saying on 3/11, and I'm like, oh, well, that must mean something, so I guess I'll go see that, because it's 3/11 movie, and 3/11's my number. It's a long story. 3/11's my number. You can find out more about it on the number 23 mention in the excuse me, I'm looking up which video if you want to reference. You don't care. You don't care. I put it as hash marks, didn't I? Wait, is it on this one? No. Well, it doesn't matter. You get me. Ah, yeah, the 2007 video. It was the last one. Forgive me for wasting airtime. So let's get through this. We got a couple more things to mention. The Curious Case of Benjamin Button was a movie I wanted to see but didn't get around to seeing in theaters due to what I was going through, and eventually saw the next year. 2008 was the year of my separation. The year my wife had cheated on me. And then cheated on me again. Because they were two different. Anyway, while we were separated before the divorce was finalized and my house that her and I had gotten together was empty and was just me, I bought The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and I wept at the part when they're doing the montage of the loving relationship. And it was just like all these memories I had of a decade with my wife gone. And I just couldn't take it. I broke. I think I let it all out when I first saw Benjamin Button, because their story was such a happy, sweet love story that I could relate to, but they always end. And I was just devastated to be alone. Speaking of, The Reader, starring Ralph Fiennes and Kate Winslet. The Reader is my favorite Kate Winslet movie. It's my favorite Kate Winslet performance. It's the movie that made me fall in love with Kate Winslet. She's only a little bit older than me, but especially given at the time, she was an older woman, you know, to me. And in that movie, it's about, you know, a younger man having a relationship with an older woman. Things ensue when he sees her later in life on trial for Nazi crimes. It's it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. I think The Reader is one of the greatest movies ever made. It's an amazing, impactful, touching story, especially in the end. Where that movie goes, like it's three movies in one. You've got your first half, you've got your court stuff, and then you've got your ending. And it's all adds to each other in such a beautiful way. It is such an amazing story, and her performance. And she does full nude scenes, Kate Winslet. I tell you, women are at their best in their 30s and 40s. Yeah, I don't know if you knew that, but spread the word. Because a lot of them don't know that. Kate Winslet looks amazing in The Reader from head to toe. And it's probably one of the reasons that I'm a fan of natural beauty and older women. Kate Winslet. People think of Kate Winslet, they might think of Titanic. If you were to think of Kate Winslet in the nude, anyway. Maybe a couple other things. Me, 100% The Reader. Oh my gosh, The Reader. But what a great movie. And the ending of that movie made me cry. And at the time, I think this was even before Benjamin Button, because I saw The Reader. Anyway, at the time, because it had Oscar buzz, at the time, The Reader was the second movie to ever make me cry. Which before that, it was only 1 hour photo, and that was shocking. You can hear all about that story in the 2000 something. Look up what year it came out. It might be a year off, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The point being, The Reader made me cry with how beautiful, sad, touching, and happy the ending is. And it's one of those, then you realize why it's called The Reader. God, what a movie. I need to watch that. What a movie. What a movie. See The Reader. Speed Racer. I have to mention Speed Racer because it's such an underrated film. It's not one of my favorite films. It's not like, oh my gosh, I love that movie so much and I quote it all the time and it's... But it's an amazing film and gorgeous. And I wasn't even a fan of the Speed Racer cartoon. I was a fan of this one song where they use dialogue from the show and turn it more of a sexual innuendo song with the here comes Speed Racer after him and Trixie are making weird sounds for a little while in the middle of that song. Look it up. Because it always started with, my name is Wile E. Coyote. And I was like, what is that? And then I found out later that Wile E. Coyote's like first few cartoons, he actually spoke and had this great voice. And then they took his voice from him. So I guess I should mention Speed Racer. It's a really good movie. Especially for an adaptation and stylistically. Oh, gorgeous. I've never seen anything like it before or since. That movie stayed with me for days after I saw that in the theaters. I was like, I don't remember anything about that plot or any of the characters. But boy, was that some eye candy. Some of the best eye candy, period. Okay. Last but not least, there was a lot of movies in 2008, including like Speed Racer and many others that had actors from Lost. Good times. So many movies in 2008 I didn't even bother to mention. I had to shave it down to the long list I just did that I'm out of time for talking about. So we have to talk about the final one, the number one most impactful film that was released in 2008, of course, would be Star Wars. The Clone Wars film, which is the first 3 episodes of the brand new show Clone Wars that I think... The movie came out in August, and I think the show premiered in like November. Something like that. Shortly thereafter. Okay, probably like one of my least favorite Star Wars things ever. My least favorite Star Wars theatrically released movie, obviously. If it was 3 episodes of Clone Wars, great. But seeing it as a movie in a theater, okay. The reason it's number 1, though, the reason it's the most impactful, is because it was released on August 15th, and I had a court date on August 15th. For other things. But I had to answer for those things at that court date, and they send you one of those letters beforehand. Don't forget you have this court date. I guess I'm admitting now, but this has already been taken care of a decade later. The last time I was in jail was because I didn't go to this court date. Yeah. And I had a warrant, a bench warrant, for 5 years. But it was one of those things. They give you the letter. Here's your court date, and then it says we're gonna recommend jail time. If you're gonna tell me you're gonna recommend jail time when I go to court, I'm not gonna go to court because obviously I don't want to go to jail. And if I'm gonna go to jail anyway, I'll go to jail when you find me and make me go to jail. I'm not gonna voluntarily go to jail. Oh, and by the way, that's the day Star Wars Clone Wars comes out. If you're saying there's a possibility I might be in jail, I'm not gonna miss seeing that movie on the big screen. So I ditched my court date, spent the day away from the house, paranoid that they were gonna come knocking on my door or something. That's not how they do it, by the way. And I watched the Clone Wars movie by myself and fell asleep. Probably better sleep than I would have gotten in jail. Then 5 years later, I was sentenced to 10 days, ended up doing 7 for good behavior for not showing up for that court date. Was it worth it? Yes. Because that was a pretty good story, right? And how many Star Wars fans can say, I'm so much a Star Wars fan, I went to jail for a week just so I could see the Clone Wars movie in theaters. That's a Star Wars fan. 2008. What a year. The year my wife left me, and I still acted like a 16-year-old. Okie dokie.